How many of you remember the Whig Party?
Anyone? Anyone?
Would it surprise you if I told you the Whig Party imploded after defying their constituents? Would you believe it died when honorable, serious patriots, fed up with political games in Washington, started a new party to solve America's most divisive issue of the time because the Whigs wouldn't? But even more interesting, would you be shocked to know that it is happening all over again, right now, right before your very eyes? And if it turns out the way it did last time, America is about to see a rebirth of freedom and liberty in this country that we haven't seen in over 150 years. Rosie the Riveter here, dropping more truth bombs to destroy fake news and propaganda. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell to get new videos when they are uploaded. Now, let's get into today's riveting topic. Over the years, America has experienced multiple political ideologies and parties to which the people subscribe to. Once the Federalists, formally organized in 1791, the Anti-Federalists assembled behind Thomas Jefferson to form the National Republican Party, also referred to as Jeffersonian Republicans, Republicans, and Democratic Republicans. After the War of 1812, the Federalists virtually disappeared, leaving essentially the Democratic Republican Party only. Following the contentious election of 1824, Andrew Jackson and his supporters broke to form today's Democratic Party. These Jacksonian Democrats championed Jackson as the president of the common man. However, opponents soon tagged him King Andrew, following his domineering seizure of political power dealing with pro-slavery issues, overruling states' rights when convenient, suppressing Native Americans and forcing them west while ignoring Supreme Court rulings forbidding him doing so, and abandoning God's divine providence for the idea of manifest destiny to justify his authoritarian grab of westward lands. Regardless, Jackson's back-to-back presidential wins greatly weakened the National Republican Party, forcing the opposition to regroup. In 1834, small government Jacksonian Republicans, abolitionists, and states' rights proponents who opposed what they saw as tyranny from Jackson formed the new Whig Party. So, what happened to the Whigs? Simply put, they sold out their constituents, and those constituents moved on to a better, stronger party. So, what did the Whigs actually do? As we all know, slavery was a very intense issue for Americans from its birth in 1776. In their first expansion since the Revolutionary War, the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 forbids slavery in the newly obtained Northwest Territory, following Thomas Jefferson's proposal, with the hope that all new territories would follow suit. Unfortunately, as the country expanded westward, the slavery issue remained a dominating topic. The Northwest Ordinance essentially established an invisible line, initially formed by the Ohio River, in essence separating the free North from the slave South. As states fought to keep a balance between free and slave states, Congress passed the Missouri Compromise of 1820, which extended the invisible line between free northern territories and slave southern territories, thus somewhat keeping statewide equality regarding the issue. However, in 1854, Democrats and Whigs in the Congress made some backroom deals, reneged on their promises, and passed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which virtually nullified the 1820 Compromise. It allowed settlers to determine the slave status of Nebraska and Kansas despite their geographical location, and Kansas already being designated a free state. As a result, pro- and anti-slavery settlers flooded Kansas, leading to massive bloodshed and death. Dubbed Bleeding Kansas, the reverberating violence even extended all the way to the U.S. Senate floor. Among the victims of the bloodbath was the Whig Party itself. Pro-slavery Democrats dominated Southern politics, with their fellow comrades in the North supplementing their efforts in Congress. Their support of the Kansas-Nebraska Act was not a surprise. However, the betrayal of many of the Whigs was the last straw. Northern Whigs were overwhelmingly anti-slavery, while many Southern Whigs advocated for slavery where it was already established. However, they opposed its spread into new states. That was until the Kansas-Nebraska Act, of which they now supported. Before the ink of the bill was dry, honest, die-hard abolitionist members of the party, along with some Democrats, walked away and organized the Republican Party with the sole purpose of ending slavery once and for all. Within 6 years, the Republican Party had won the White House and the Congress, despite the fact the Republican Party in 1860 had little or no presence in the South, resulting in Lincoln not even being on a political voting ticket. In the next 10 years after that, 3 amendments ensuring freedom and citizenship for all blacks, as well as voting rights, were passed, and the country's defeat of slavery had finally put America on the road, heading towards fulfilling the declaration that all men are created equal. Today, 160 years later, some people within the Republican Party are saying all the right things on the campaign trail, but once in office, they side with their Democrat counterparts almost every single time. Betraying Republican principles, RINOs, or Republicans in name only, have formed a virtual uniparty with the Democrats as they seem to walk in lockstep with each other. RINOs are not representing their voters, just like the Southern Whigs, but are instead handing over our republic to the deep state. It seems like some crave the adulation they receive from the mainstream media whenever they repeat Democrat talking points and go against the Republican Party. The accolades they get for criticizing MAGA Republicans, a majority of their party's supporters, mind you, must be dopamine dumps to media darlings such as Chris Christie, Adam Kinzinger, John Kasich, and Liz Cheney. Some RINOs only run as a Republican because it'll be easier to win in their area. Yet they remain Democrats at heart, even though their ideology really goes against those who voted them in. Most just give their loyalty to the hand that feeds them. What hand, do you ask? Well, the opposition, that's who. Just look at who's funding and supporting Nikki Haley's campaign. RINO leaders also hold caucus members hostage to re-election funds as a means to control Congress. Or worse, they just outright bribe them. Regardless of their motives, they are a danger to our republic as they are not representing their voters. More often than not, they side with the Democrats, only giving their Republican constituents a meatless bone here or there, just to have a good campaign talking point when the time comes. In reality, RINOs put up a good front for a while, then roll over like a dead dog under the guise of compromise to give away our freedoms and liberties. This has been happening for over 100 years, really since Republican President Theodore Roosevelt embraced progressivism. But it has become painfully obvious over the last 30 years. I can't tell you how many times during my adult years Republicans seem to be holding fast, about to obtain a victory in Congress, only to have people like John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski give it all away. Not to mention the ineffectual performance of Romney's niece, Ronna McDaniel, as RNC chairman. As we say, they are notorious for snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. The defeats were always followed by the common "we'll get him next time" chorus by Republican leaders John Boehner, Paul Ryan, and Mitch McConnell. As RINO George Bush said,
"There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, 'Fool me once, shame on you. It fooled me. We can't get fooled again.
I finally saw Bush's true colors in 2007 as he worked with McCain and Ted Kennedy to pass an immigration reform bill. Conservatives saw right through their manipulations, exposing it for what it was, amnesty, and made their voices known to the congressman, me included. This was when I stopped donating to the GOP. Fortunately, the bill went down in flames, even though the media, progressives, and RINOs insisted it was not amnesty. Yet, McCain continued to push his reform bill until his death. This betrayal of RINOs was actually the genesis of the Tea Party movement, which has now evolved into MAGA, Make America Great Again. While I pray it does not descend into violence, we're watching our generation's Kansas-Nebraska moment as illegals are invading our country, while Congress is again pushing for amnesty. States pass laws to allow non-citizens to vote. And lawmakers propose legislation allowing illegals to join our armed services and obtain citizenship. So let that sink in. We are going to give people who infiltrate our borders illegally guns under the guise of defending those borders and then reward them with citizenship? What sane person would think this is a good idea? Are you still wondering why the vast majority of illegals are of military age? Are you still wondering why these young men are not coming from Central and South America only, but somehow are making it here from Africa and China as well? Still think amnesty and the replacement theory are just right-wing conspiracies? Up until the day Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell proposed their huge Trojan horse immigration bill, Biden, Mayorkas, Karine Jean-Pierre, every Democrat, and every Trump-hating RINO insisted there was absolutely no border crisis. Then on a dime, it became treasonous to oppose their so-called border bill. But here's what Schumer and McConnell and the media didn't tell you.
Here he is.
Just very simply, when we entered this thing, McConnell, his top priority was funding for Ukraine. But public opinion and the very strong political rhetoric that we ought to secure our own border before we spend $60 billion to secure Ukraine's was effective. And so McConnell finally switched and said, okay, we got to let Democrats know we're serious. We're going to defeat cloture on this bill, and we're going to demand that border security is going to be attached to funding for Ukraine. Then secret negotiations occurred on an issue that the public supports Republicans on, and we end up with this monstrosity of a bill. It's an immigration bill. It's not a border security bill. But during that time frame, we repeatedly talked about making Ukraine funding contingent on border metrics. You know, just like performance measurements in business, right? As the border was secured, you'd get $5 billion a month. I mean, we had it all laid out, had a proposal. It had a great deal of support in our conference. But what Mike pointed out is, unbeknownst to us at the time, McConnell told Langford that's not even on the table.
Wow.
He on his own, using his own authority, without telling the conference, even though he knew the conference supported tying border security or Ukraine funding to actually securing the border, McConnell just took that off the table. And that moment of leverage we had, where we could use Biden's desire for Ukraine funding to actually force him to use his executive authority to secure the border, has been lost. And that is why so many of us are speaking out against McConnell. It was such a breach of his leadership position, and is such a, just a horrible thing to do to Americans who want a secure border. But that's where we're at. So again, I think it has been smoked out. Now the action.
Fortunately, Republicans discovered McConnell's double cross and killed the bill. But the bombshell dropped by Senator J.D. Vance exposed what the so-called border bill was truly about: an infinite flow of money to Ukraine. They actually hid a provision into the bill to allow them to impeach President Trump if he tried to defund Ukraine in his next term. Schumer promptly accused Trump and MAGA of not wanting to secure the border before immediately separating the border funding from the rest and then proceeding to demand the legislation securing other countries' borders while ours continues to remain wide open with millions walking right on in. So no, Schumer and the rest don't give a rip about stopping the influx of illegals. In fact, the bill was deceptively designed to make it a permanent way of life in America. Republicans have always been called the warmongers, but it is now glaringly obvious it's the Dems and RINOs who are demanding endless money to Ukraine and the Middle East. Please stop listening to what the politicians are saying and start watching what they are doing. They are wolves in sheep's clothing, folks, on both sides, working together behind the scenes and against the American people, actually attacking those trying to fix the problems. Along with his illegal immigration betrayal, one of our biggest warmongering, Ukraine-loving RINOs ever was John McCain. Let's not forget he proudly admitted giving the now completely debunked Russian Steele dossier to the FBI. You know, the dossier that was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC to take down Trump during the 2016 election and then used to try to destroy his presidency. It was a complete lie, and they all knew it, including McCain, who proclaimed he would have done it again if given a chance. I could do a whole video alone on his betrayals, but that's for another time. Can you see now why Nancy Pelosi appointed RINOs to the January 6th Select Committee as they continue to target Trump and MAGA supporters while still ignoring the guy who planted the DNC bomb despite having his picture, car description, and license plate number? But RINOs are not just indigenous to Washington. They exist all over the country. Ohio's Republican-controlled state Congress recently passed a bill prohibiting transgender surgeries for children under 18. RINO Governor Mike DeWine vetoed this bill against the people's wishes. Why? Apparently, he had 40,000 reasons, putting his own personal interests over his constituents. Fortunately, the state Congress overrode his veto and made the bill law anyway. Nikki Haley won the South Carolina governorship while riding on the Tea Party train and talked a good game when it came to supporting Trump. So why are so many souring on her?
And we will get them. But I will not now, not ever, support raising the gas tax. Finally, let's increase the gas tax by 10 cents over the next 3 years.
I would not run if President Trump ran.
I'm Nikki Haley, and I'm running for president.
Every person on social media should be verified by their name.
I never said government should go and require anyone's name.
But what we do know is 65 is way too low, and we need to increase that.
For claiming the retirement age is, quote, way, way too low.
I have never once said that. I never said Hillary Clinton was an inspiration.
I went with my friend Eleanor Kitzman to a firm and leadership program where Hillary Clinton was speaking. And I walked out of there and I said, I'm running for office.
I could go on for hours exposing RINOs, but I think you're getting my point. If you do want to see more, though, check out my previous videos. But don't be fooled. The deep state doesn't seem to mind the infighting. In fact, they need it. It's how they keep we the people occupied by focusing our frustration of the nation's problems on each other instead of where it belongs. The Dems and Whigs of the 1850s lied about fixing slavery and betrayed the country with their Kansas-Nebraska Act. Fed-up citizens from both parties banded together, formed a new united party, and fixed the problem under Republican President Abraham Lincoln and Republican congressional leadership. Do I really need to explain any more to show you why they hate Trump and fear fear a MAGA party so much? We the people have finally realized it's not Republicans versus Democrats on Capitol Hill. It's we the people against Capitol Hill's deep state uniparty. And that awakening is what they are truly terrified of. It's time we sent the RINOs back to the wild and start making America great again with true patriots who put we the people over themselves. I'm Rosie the Riveter, and that's my 2 cents. But what do you think? Leave your comments down below. If you enjoy my content, please consider supporting my work on Patreon. You can find all my videos and my blog, Liberating Letters, at thefaxpaper.com. You can also start your own research on the Fax Paper by exploring the thousands of links to articles I have, including those noted in my videos, sharing the truth fake news propagandists won't. Investigate and discover the truth for yourself.